How do you change a nation's mentality from one of slavery and dependency to self-reliance and freedom? You get them to build. Rabbi Sacks of blessed memory said that it is not what is done for us that makes us free. It's what we do that makes us free. The nation of Israel was certainly liberated from bondage in the land of Egypt and deposited in the wilderness, also called the desert of Sinai, but that didn't make them free. It just made them not slaves. It's very different to have a freedom mentality. The Jewish people witnessed signs and wonders, the likes of which none of us have ever seen nor probably will ever see. They watched the nation of Egypt brought to its knees by a series of plagues. They witnessed the entire Egyptian army obliterated in the Sea of Reeds. But then 3 days later, they're complaining about the flavor of the water. There's water provided from a rock. There's food that falls from the sky. The Jewish people come to Mount Sinai and they witness a national revelation, the likes of which has never occurred before. And 40 days later, they're building a golden calf. So what in the world is going on here? How is it they can see all these signs and wonders and yet constantly be complaining about the food and the water and the leadership and their lives? They want to go back to Egypt where they claim life was better. That's, I guess, the tyranny that they're familiar with, the tyranny that they know, even though because it's certain, rather than going off into the wilderness where they could have prosperity and national self-determination. But they're afraid and they have the slave mentality where they're dependent on Moses for everything, food, water, protection, everything. They can't do for themselves, and I guess who could blame them? They've been slaves for centuries. It's only in this week's portion of the Bible that Rabbi Sacks says that the Jewish people start to become a nation, a self-reliant nation. Moses tells them to start donating for the purposes of building something called the Mishkan, also called the Tabernacle. They donate money and other supplies necessary. Everybody donates, and it says that they've donated so much that Moses had to get them to stop because they donated too much. And when they were donating, when they were gathering up the supplies and donating and then constructing this tabernacle, the Jewish people did not fight with each other. They did not fight with the leadership either. When they were working on a project, when they were building something, they stopped fighting. When they were constantly recipients and dependent, they were fighting. When they were taking an active engaging in the active process of building something, they stopped fighting. Not signs and wonders and miracles. That didn't convince them. And in my own life with my kids, when we were building our sukkah in the back of our house for the holiday of the Festival of Tabernacles, also called Sukkot, we were building our own sukkah in the back of the house. The kids had their headlamps and their hammers and their screws and their nails and their drills. And with some wonderful community members, they started building. And they did not fight at all because they were working on a project with their hands, creating something. They weren't receiving. They weren't dependent. They were actively engaged in the process of building something. And that's just something that we should all remember. When we're engaged in a project, when we're building something, rather than receiving, when we're dependent, that's when our lives will be much better. That's when we'll come together as a nation and as a family. Thank you for watching.